Our God did make the earth a place of beauty, love, and light, where skies and seas and all of life reveal Him with delight. For God did make the earth a womb where beauty
is all around. separation doesn't have the amplitude that the thought that emerges from a field of love and coherence of our oneness with God. So a small group of people holding a field of oneness, way more powerful than thousands and thousands of people living in the field of separation. And so we're holding that field, making a difference, walking hand in hand, heart to heart, soul to soul, and an ever-increasing awareness that the vision that we have caught about the great possibility is not the future, it's the now, encoded within every cell of our being.
The most massive tsunami, perfect storm is bearing down upon us. This perfect storm is mounting a grim reality, increasingly grim reality, and we are facing that reality with the full belief that we can solve our problems with technology, and that's very understandable. Now, this perfect storm that we are facing is the result of our rising population, rising towards 10 billion people, land that is turning to desert, and of course, climate change. Now, there's no question about it at all. We will only solve the problem of replacing fossil fuels with technology. But fossil fuels, carbon, coal, and gas, are by no means the only thing that is causing climate change. Desertification is a fancy word for land that is turning to desert. And this happens only when we create too much bare ground. There's no other cause. And I intend to focus on most of the world's land that is turning to desert. But I have for you a very simple message that offers more hope than you can imagine. We have environments where humidity is guaranteed throughout the year. On those, it is almost impossible to create vast areas of bare ground, no matter what you do. Nature covers it up so quickly. And we have environments where we have months of humidity followed by months of dryness, and that is where desertification is occurring. Fortunately, with space technology now, we can look at it from space. And when we do, you can see the proportions fairly well. Generally, what you see in green is not desertifying, and what you see in brown is. And these are by far the greatest areas of the Earth. About 2/3, I would guess, of the world is desertifying. I took this picture in the Tihama Desert while 25 millimeters, that's an inch of rain, was falling. Think of it in terms of drums of water, each containing 200 liters. Over 1,000 drums of water fell on every hectare of that land that day. The next day, the land looked like this. Where had that water gone? Some of it ran off as flooding, but most of the water that soaked into the soil simply evaporated out again, exactly as it does in your garden if you leave the soil uncovered. Now, because the fate of water and carbon are tied to soil organic matter, when we damage soils, you give off carbon. Carbon goes back to the atmosphere. Now, you are told over and over, repeatedly, that desertification is only occurring in arid and semi-arid areas of the world, and that tall grasslands like this one, in high rainfall, are of no consequence. But if you do not look at grasslands, but look down into them, you find that most of the soil in that grassland that you've just seen is bare and covered with a crust of algae, leading to increased runoff and evaporation. That is the cancer of desertification that we do not recognize till its terminal form. Now, we know that desertification is caused by livestock, mostly cattle, sheep, and goats, overgrazing the plants, leaving the soil bare and giving off methane. Almost everybody knows this, from Nobel laureates to golf caddies, or was taught it, as I was. Now, the environments like you see here, dusty environments in Africa, where I grew up, and I loved wildlife, and so I grew up hating livestock because of the damage they were doing. And then my university education as an ecologist reinforced my beliefs. Well, I have news for you. We were once just as certain that the world was flat. We were wrong then, and we are wrong again. And I want to invite you now to come along on my journey of re-education, and discovery. When I was a young man, a young biologist in Africa, I was involved in setting aside marvelous areas as future national parks. Now, no sooner, this was in the 1950s, and no sooner did we remove the hunting, drum-beating people to protect the animals, then the land began to deteriorate, as you see in this park that we formed. Now, no livestock were involved, but suspecting that we had too many elephants now, I did the research and I proved we had too many, and I recommended that we would have to reduce their numbers and bring them down to a level that the land could sustain. Now, that was a terrible decision for me to have to make, and it was political dynamite, frankly. So our government formed a team of experts to evaluate my research. They agreed with me, and over the following years, we shot 40,000 elephants to try to stop the damage. And it got worse, not better. Loving elephants as I do, that was the saddest and greatest blunder of my life, and I will carry that to my grave. One good thing did come out of it. It made me absolutely determined to devote my life to finding solutions. When I came to the United States, I got a shock to find national parks like this one desertifying as badly as anything in Africa. And there'd been no livestock on this land for over 70 years. And I found that American scientists had no explanation for this except that it is arid and natural. So I then began looking at all the research plots I could over the whole of the western United States where cattle had been removed to prove that it would stop desertification. But I found the opposite. As we see on this research station, where this grassland that was green in 1961, by 2002, had changed to that situation. And the authors of the position paper on climate change, from which I obtained these pictures, attribute this change to unknown processes. Clearly, we have never understood what is causing desertification, which has destroyed many civilizations and now threatens us globally. We have never understood it. Take 1 square meter of soil and make it bare, like this is down here, and I promise you, you will find it much colder at dawn and much hotter at midday than that same piece of ground if it's just covered with litter, plant litter. You have changed the microclimate. Now, by the time you are doing that and increasing greatly the percentage of bare ground on more than half the world's land, you are changing macroclimate. But we have just simply not understood why was it beginning to happen 10,000 years ago? Why has it accelerated lately? We had no understanding of that. What we had failed to understand was that these seasonal humidity environments of the world, the soil and the vegetation, developed with very large numbers of grazing animals. And that these grazing animals developed with ferocious pack-hunting predators. Now, the main defense against pack-hunting predators is to get into herds. And the larger the herd, the safer the individuals. Now, large herds dung and urinate all over their own food, and they have to keep moving. And it was that movement that prevented the overgrazing of plants, while the periodic trampling ensured good cover of the soil, as we see where a herd has passed. This picture is a typical seasonal grassland. It has just come through 4 months of rain, and it's now going into 8 months of dry season. And watch the change as it goes into this long dry season. Now, all of that grass you see above ground has to decay biologically before the next growing season. And if it doesn't, the grassland and the soil begin to die. Now, if it does not decay biologically, it shifts to oxidation, which is a very slow process, and this smothers and kills grasses, leading to a shift to woody vegetation and bare soil releasing carbon. To prevent that, we have traditionally used fire. But fire also leaves the soil bare, releasing carbon. And worse than that, burning 1 hectare of grassland gives off more and more damaging pollutants than 6,000 cars. And we are burning in Africa every single year more than 1 billion hectares of grasslands, and almost nobody is talking about it. We justify the burning as scientists because it does remove the dead material and it allows the plants to grow. Now, looking at this grassland of ours that has gone dry, what could we do to keep that healthy? And bear in mind, I'm talking of most of the world's land now. Okay? We cannot reduce animal numbers to rest it more without causing desertification and climate change. We cannot burn it without causing desertification and climate change. What are we going to do? There is only one option. I repeat to you, only one option left to climatologists and scientists, and that is to do the unthinkable and to use livestock, bunched and moving, as a proxy for former herds and predators and mimic nature. There is no other alternative left to mankind. So let's do that. So on this bit of grassland, we'll do it, but just in the foreground. We'll impact it very heavily with cattle to mimic nature, and we've done so, and look at that. All of that grass is now covering the soil as dung, urine, and litter or mulch, as every one of the gardeners amongst you would understand, and that soil is ready to absorb and hold the rain, to store carbon, and to break down methane. And we did that without using fire to damage the soil, and the plants are free to grow. When I first realized that we had no option as scientists but to use much vilified livestock to address climate change and desertification, okay, I was faced with a real dilemma. How were we to do it? We'd had 10,000 years of extremely knowledgeable pastoralists bunching and moving their animals, but they had created the great man-made deserts of the world. Then we'd had 100 years of modern range science, and that had accelerated desertification, as we first discovered in Africa and then confirmed in the United States, and as you see in this picture of land managed by the federal government. Clearly more was needed than bunching and moving the animals, and humans, over thousands of years, had never been able to deal with nature's complexity. But we biologists and ecologists had never tackled anything as complex as this. So rather than reinvent the wheel, I began studying other professions to see if anybody had. And I found there were planning techniques that I could take and adapt to our biological need, and from those I developed what we call holistic management and planned grazing, a planning process. And that does address all of nature's complexity and our social, environmental, economic complexity. Today, we have young women like this one teaching villagers in Africa how to put their animals together into larger herds, plan their grazing to mimic nature, and where we have them hold their animals overnight, we run them in a predator-friendly manner, because we have a lot of lions and so on, and where they do this and hold them overnight to prepare the crop fields, we're getting very great increases in crop yield as well. Let's look at some results. This is land close to land that we manage in Zimbabwe. It has just come through 4 months of very good rains it got that year, and it's going into the long dry season. But as you can see, all of that rain, almost all of it, has evaporated from the soil surface. Their river is dry despite the rain just having ended, okay? And we have 150,000 people on almost permanent food aid. Now let's go to our land nearby on the same day with the same rainfall and look at that. Our river is flowing and healthy and clean. It's fine. The production of grass, shrubs, trees, wildlife, everything is now more productive, and we have virtually no fear of dry years. And we did that by increasing the cattle and goats 400%, planning the grazing to mimic nature and integrate them with all the elephants.
The major principles of healthy traditional diets, and we need to understand what these principles are, because the actual diets are very different. You know, some places had lots of animal foods, and some places had grains, and others didn't. People had milk. But the basic underlying principles of all these diets are the same. One is animal foods from animals on pasture, very rich in 3 key vitamins, A, D, and K. An emphasis on the organ meats rather than the muscle meats. There's 10 to 100 times more nutrition in liver than there is in steak. So they really put an emphasis on the organ meats. Use of animal fats, the use of fermented foods, the use of bone broths, the proper preparation of grains. Another surprising one is salt. All traditional cultures use salt. So once you know these principles, you can incorporate them into a diet that you like, that your children will actually eat, that you can afford, and that's available where you live.
We have this notion, kind of, it's like an axiom in our culture, if you will, that in order to have a healthy ecosystem, we have to sacrifice the economy. And in order to have a healthy economy, we have to sacrifice the ecosystem. And part of my lunacy is that I really believe we can have both. Polyface really signifies the farm of many faces, yeah. We knew day one that we would not be a single species or a single dimension farm. We would not be cattle farmers or chicken farmers or corn farmers, that we would be a very multifaceted kind of place.
At Polyface, our goal is to collect as much solar energy as possible and grow as much grass as possible, because we're completely grass-based from the beginning, and everything starts there.
You know, this is 500 birds, and they just free range out, and you can see how they scatter. And they go in the shelter, in the eggmobile to lay, and so every day we move it. So yesterday it was down there. This morning I moved it up here. Tomorrow it'll move up, so it's just following the cows. Hey ladies. Hey ladies. How are you? So they're laying the eggs right here in the nest boxes inside. So you got eggs. So they're just in here. That one's just fresh. You can see it's still wet. So they're in there doing their business. We move the cows every single day to a new salad bar to mimic the herbivore, like the wildebeest, bison, Cape buffalo, to mimic the way they move, mob, and mow in nature. Once the broilers, the meat birds, come out into the little floorless field shelters, those are also on the pasture, and we graze there. They become the centerpiece, and the cows graze ahead of them to shorten the grass, because chickens like short grass.
Then the eggmobile with the laying hens would follow in behind them, about 3 days behind, scratch through for sanitation, cleaning up cow pies and repugnancy zones, fertilizing with their own manure. The pigs, of course, are sanitizing behind the cows in the barn, So it's all in an effort to capture the nutrients produced by the animals, put that back and feed the soil that would then more effectively capture solar energy and produce biomass in the form of grass. That's our goal.
This can't be done industrially. It takes warm bodies, and you can't just leave it to a computer and go off and sip coffee and let engines and machines run it all. It's hands-on, it's craft, it's artisanal, it's the potter wheel, you know. We have this cultural stigma against an agrarian existence, you know, that's only good enough for, you know, the D and the F students, you know, the redneck hillbilly trip over the transmission in the backyard, tobacco spitting, you know, grammar assaulting hillbilly, that's the farmer. And if you don't believe me, you just tell me when's the last time you went to a Little League game and all the soccer moms were, you know, strutting their stuff and telling all, you know, all about their child prodigies, you know, and mind plays Chopin at 5 years old and, you know, all these. Well, when's the last time you heard a soccer mom say to the other gals in the group, guess what? My son or daughter is going to be a farmer. We don't do that.
Need to be materialized. Initially
Okay,
materialized
so that's the question again, is how what do you see? Because there seems to be that there's always that gap. Like we see the you know, the enlightenment realized state that we'd like everybody to be in, and then we have this kind of mess, this quandary that we're in right now. So how do we make those little bridging steps?
I think we attain it within ourselves initially, and we communicate these ideas on a personal level. Spirituality, I can get, as you've just heard, I can be very verbose and loquacious on the topic, but really it just means be nice. It ain't hard, just be nice. You meet a homeless person, be nice. You get into a cab, be nice to the person. Don't see yourself as adversarial. Then the revolution has already occurred. People fear Armageddon, don't they? People fear the apocalypse, don't they? But for some, Armageddon has already occurred. The homeless people that walk our streets live already in a post-apocalyptic world. Armageddon will surely come for each of us, our own personal Armageddon, when each of us die. Isn't it redundant whether everyone simultaneously dies if each of us will individually die? Regardless, Armageddon is coming. So whilst these cataclysmic principles apply on the individual level...
people who think we might be able to extend the human lifespan through biotechnology, merging with machines.
Yeah, that's
and
all cool, man. But what I'm saying is that what we have to do is individually reach like our own personal alignment. We have to do the principles are all there. You know this. The principles are already there. We achieve detachment through meditation. We no longer then we are no once we can achieve enlightenment and once we put our satisfaction beyond our individual needs, we are no longer malleable by the pre-existing system. The system requires us to be a selfish little consumerist pods. Once we go, oh, I ain't not bothered about that. It's easier for me because I've been famous now. I know that's boring. I've been rich now. I know that's boring. I fuck loads of people now. I know that's boring. Took loads of drugs now. No, that's boring. So all that's left is spiritual enlightenment. That's all that's left.
What's the political dimension of like love and sexuality?
What is what, mate?
What's the political dimension of love and sexuality?
Well, I don't think I'm the man to ask, because my previous in that area has not been that good. It's like you don't ask Charles Manson how to run Neighbourhood Watch.
Oh, just let him get into the hills.
Are you trying to, is that an area where you're trying to like up your game?
Yeah, I'm up in it. Yeah, for me, I've got to realise that like I am not a person who can like, you know, live in will or desire. I have to learn to look only within myself for happiness. I can't let this guy run the show anymore. He's had a good innings.
What do you see your trajectory now? I mean, here you have this massive fame, this huge following, you're like a huge public artist. Like, how do you then use that for these goals that you're discussing?
Someone told me ages ago, and I should have just listened to him then. I met this Swami, he goes, should I become a monk? He went, no. Like he didn't want me in the monk gang. Like he said, you'll ruin it for the rest of us. But like, he goes, use what you have for God. Dedicate yourself to God. You know, we don't have to worry about God. Just means higher thing, difficult for us to comprehend and ascertain with our limited sensory realm. We cannot understand the ocean of reality in the teacup of the mind. Probably Rumi. So like, what I think is if there's something you're good at, doing jokes or whatever, do them jokes for God. You know?
What's your best evidence for the existence of God?
Oh, well, I feel like, sometimes I feel the gentle, playful spirit of God in nature. Sometimes I feel it within myself in quiet. For me, remember, it's a difficult concept. For me, it is life. It is consciousness. Consciousness itself is God. You cannot allow consciousness to become refracted into an abstract idea such as individualism. Individualism is a material, sensorial, biological notion which we can conquer through the expansion of consciousness. Why live on this dimension? Why live only on this frequency once we know other frequencies exist? We have an obligation for the evolution of our species to continue to pioneer. This is the country of the pioneer.
So do you feel that you're in the running to be a Messiah?
Yep! Only the true Messiah would deny his Messiah. No, I ain't bothered. I'm just going to be what I am, and that's that. Because once it goes in other people's brains, they can do what the fuck they like with it. I'm just going to be doing what I'm doing.
Nice one. Nice
but
one.
I'm ready.
Yeah. Hey, well, let's bring Yves Ensler on now.
Challenge. So here we are, a relatively immature species struggling with possible self-destruction. If aligning with the torus does hold the key to a new form of clean, safe energy access, imagine the implications. This could be the most important technology breakthrough of our times. So who wouldn't want to have an energy source that's unlimited and freely available? That turned out to be a key question, and that's what led me down the next rabbit hole. It turns out that scientists as far back as the early 1900s have been developing alternative ways to access electricity without combustion. Nikola Tesla believed he had tapped into what he called radiant energy. Many scientists believe he was accessing what's now called free energy. But before Tesla could finish the project, his financier, banker J.P. Morgan, who had a monopoly on the copper used for electrical lines, recognized how Tesla's invention could transmit electricity without wires. He then shut down Tesla's funding. Tesla's lab was burned down and he was ostracized, all for trying to implement his vision of unlimited energy for everyone. A modern-day inventor, Adam Trombly, was inspired by Tesla's work and by the possibilities of the torus. Trombly built a dynamo, a direct current generator that accessed electrical power right out of the air.
We were trying to demonstrate that by mimicking the magnetic field of a planet and rotating this device, we could actually create a dynamo that would work. And in fact, it did work, and it does work. So when we contemplate nature, when we contemplate Jupiter, or we contemplate a dynamo like the Earth rotating in space, we're basically talking about a magnet which is rotating in space. And the lines of flux of the magnet are pouring down and through in this toroidal pattern of the magnetic field. It's also expanding, contracting. It's breathing. It's taking in the energy of space literally and transforming it. Right here in this toroid, we have enough energy to transform the entire Earth. And that's not just a theoretical statement, it's literally true. To contemplate the implications of this means that every single place on Earth suddenly has power. Every single person on Earth suddenly has power. We have universal abundance.
Trombly had been invited to demonstrate one of his generators at the United Nations and the US Senate. But these events were undermined by the first Bush administration. Then the device itself was taken in a government raid. Trombly's experience isn't unique. Almost every time I found an inventor with a promising new technology in the field of free energy, he told a similar story of suppression. Inventor John Bedini began working with Tesla's theories of radiant energy decades ago and has produced an assortment of battery charging devices that generate more energy than it takes to run them. He announced that he was going to start offering them at low cost. Soon after that, he was attacked in his lab and warned not to produce the devices. For his own safety, he had to let go of marketing free energy. These are all devices from labs I personally visited.
No.
Now, the quality of this footage is obviously poor, and I'm not expecting this to convince you. My point is that being there with these inventors, accompanied by experts, and seeing these new energy devices in operation convinced me that the technology is real. And the implications of that to me are absolutely thrilling. Canadian John Hutchison
anybody thinks you're going to say what you think. And at a time of the kind of global threats that we are facing now, it is not being an alarmist to say that something is very wrong and we must all wake up quickly and act if, in fact, the times are alarming. Now, what does that mean? What makes it happen? Well, you can liken the state of humanity today to the Titanic. You know, the Titanic is on its way to the iceberg. I think that's why we all relate to the Titanic, not just because it was a good movie, but because it's an archetype. We all get it. It's like we're on the Titanic. We're headed towards that iceberg. And the iceberg could take many different forms. It could be a biological disaster. It could be a weather catastrophe. It could be a nuclear catastrophe. The point really isn't what form would crashing into the iceberg take. What matters is that we must turn this ship around, and we must turn it around now. How are we going to do that? Well, the probability vectors are quite grim. Listen to the environmental scientists talking today. If you look at these things only from a left brain perspective, only from a rational perspective, ladies and gentlemen, things are very grim, and it could be argued that in many, many areas it's already too late to turn this thing around. What we need is a force multiplier. Now, let's talk about this. I can't even conceive of a kind of, sort of, you know, sometimes when it's convenient, committed terrorist. These people are committed. They have shown in horrifying ways that the worldview that they feel needs to be effectuated on the planet, they will do anything it takes to do it. And every time there is some terrorist incident, the president, whoever the president is, calls it some cowardly act that will not be tolerated. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I could call these acts evil, I could call them unconscionable. I don't know about cowardly. The truth of the matter is hatred has a perverse kind of courage. On the other hand, a lot of us, and I know I've been one myself at times, we're, you know, kind of, sort of, sometimes when it's convenient, committed to love. And so what's happening is not that there are more people who hate on the planet than who love. It's not that there are more people who would consciously or unconsciously do destructive things to the planet than there are people who want to do wonderful, creative things on the planet. It's that hatred has been turned into a political and social force. And it is time now for us to do what Gandhi said and what Gandhi did and what King then brought to the United States based on the teachings of Gandhi. We must turn love into a social and political force. It's not enough. As much genius as there is, and has been displayed in such amazing ways here today, when Jackson was talking about what he's doing in Uganda, when Stephen was talking about what he's doing in the Bronx, when Jennifer was talking about what she's doing with her school, this is a revolution of love that is now occurring. And that love is a force multiplier. And Einstein said that time and space are illusions of consciousness. So, ladies and gentlemen, there's only one thing that's going to be able to turn this ship around. And it's not just that we come up with the technological answers. You know, Jackson could have stayed in New York and become an investment banker. Science cannot explain what makes us make the choices that we make. The choices that we make that come from love, however, lift us up to be able to do things that we ultimately otherwise could not do. And that is what I believe is happening on the planet today. It is a name, it is a collective understanding, and it is an understanding with the realization that there is genius, yes, within every child, but there is also genius within every adult. They used to tell us, oh, once the brain cells have died, they can't regenerate. Now they're saying, oops, actually they can. Sometimes we feel, oh, I messed up my life, it's all over, I'll never be of use. Oh, yes, you can. That is the story today. Redemption, whether you think of redemption in secular terms or in religious terms. Change, transformation, and we have no time to waste. And as we do that, and as each of us return to that natural entelechy, that's the name of the game today, self-correction. Look at the United States itself. We've made some big mistakes in our history, but we have tended to self-correct. Yes, we had slaves, but we got rid of them. We abolished slavery. Yes, we did not give women the right to vote, but then we did. And that's the time that's the moment in which we live. That's the era of our history of this country, and that's the era of this history of our species. We have really gotten out of line here. We have really deviated from our natural intelligence. We use more money to figure out ways to kill each other than ways to heal each other and to help each other. We do more to compete than to collaborate. We have more fear in the air than we have fear in love. But you know what? That was then and this is now. Today, in this moment, each of us through awakening. And we're reminded by people like Stephen Ritz and by people like Jackson, this is what can happen. We can all do it. But all of us are necessary to be the immune cells in the psychic bloodstream of humanity. That's the issue. That is what is happening now. Love, that is the force multiplier. It will turn this ship around. I can't promise that if we all awaken to this collective force field of possibility that is on the earth today, none of us can promise that in our lifetime all war will be gone and all unnecessary suffering can be gone. But we do know this. If we do what we can do right now, we will die knowing we did our part. And in that case, we will know we kicked ass and we'll die happy. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Now, in order to create peaceful century through dialogue, so in order to develop century of dialogue, we need willpower. Willpower, determination comes if you think well-being of others and recognize everyone have right to achieve happy life. Then you can develop will, determination. Any problem, have to find solution through talk. If you too much sort of stress, we and they, big distance, then concept of bully, concept of violence, killing come. Because your interest not related with their interest. So they really harmful your own interest. So destroy them. That's the concept of war. Now today's reality, no longer that. As I mentioned earlier, global warming, global economy, and all these matters heavily interdependent. Now, time comes, we have to think one world, different color, different nationality, different system, different kind of religious faith. It's secondary. We have to think 7 billion human beings, same human being. So we need conviction or sense of oneness of 7 billion human beings. That we need to educate. Now, future is very, as I mentioned earlier, there is potential of many difficulties. So these difficulties for humanity, not individual nations or individual people. So we need full cooperation. In order to take full cooperation, we need sense of oneness of 7 billion human beings. Oneness. So their interest is my interest. My interest, their interest. My problem, also their problem. Their problem, also my problem. So, you young people, while you week by week, even day by day, even hour by hour, you see, you are learning new things. So meantime, you should think, you see, these basic sort of, or say human values or human natures, I think very, very important. That I want to tell you.